Hey everyone, and welcome back. As I mentioned in our intros just a second ago, we have not one, but two great guests for this Built in Ohio podcast. And if you're thinking about tech in Ohio, you're probably coming across in some way, shape, or form New Albany. Central Ohio is on fire. There's been so much happening, so much going on. And New Albany, if Ohio's at the heart of it all, New Albany seems to be at the heart of it all for the state of Ohio and our local governments that are really leading and helping drive tech economic development. And so our two guests, which you just heard the intro and bios for, but Jennifer, I want to welcome you to the show first, if that's okay. You are with the team at the City of New Albany, and if you could maybe expand a little bit about what you do day to day and how tech plays into all that.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much, Chris, for having us. So I'm the Community Development Director, as you mentioned, and my role is to run the department, which consists of several different disciplines. We have engineering, economic development, planning, zoning, and building all in one place. And we believe this is important because we like to say that we're a one-stop shop for development from the time that a company is first interested in coming to the community all the way to the time that the company is here and they're operational and we're doing retention meetings. So basically what we're promising on the front end, we know we're going to be able to deliver. And I think that's what's made us very nimble, made us able to respond to the changing demands that are in the economy. And most importantly, has really enabled us to step up and meet the needs of our tech clients.
That's awesome. And Brad, I'd love to welcome you now into the show and get your perspective because you work with, I'm guessing, with pros like Jennifer across probably the world. And one of my favorite, we all have our COVID and pandemic stories, but one of my last events that I was able to go to was actually I think it was probably the groundbreaking. I'm not quite sure exactly what it was called, but at Meta's New Albany data center site. And so that's kind of one of the ones that sticks out to me is like, here's this awesome celebration that people from across the state, the governor, the lieutenant governor, Jobs Ohio, those folks, certainly, folks from New Albany. And then we all had to go home for quite some time, but that's one of my little fun anecdotes. But Brad, if you could tell us on your side, from the industry side, how you work with folks like Jennifer, what that looks like, and what you're hoping to accomplish when you do work with local governments and economic development officials.
Yeah, and also thank you for having me on. It's an absolute pleasure, and it's always a pleasure to be on the same forum as Jennifer. So, my team, at its bottom line, we want to drive smart location decisions for the company as a whole, and that involves just making sure we're evaluating data, doing appropriate research, but at the same time, it's about engaging and building relationships with federal, state, local partners. This particular project and our presence in New Albany is a culmination of so many parties coming together in just a smart and collaborative way, and ultimately resulting in something awesome. So I'm glad that you were at that event. It was awesome to see everybody there. Jennifer and team, when I kind of think about how we engage in this project in particular, I mean, they are world class. Some of my fondest moments in economic development relate to this project and sitting in a conference room with Jennifer and kind of talking through various things for the project and the needs of what the data center ultimately are. I unfairly hold up the standard that she set with other economic development officials when we do our other global site selection projects, but it really is, it's a partnership, and it's a problem solving endeavor of just walking through certain things and understanding, what the community needs are and what the project's needs are, and finding that happy medium. And I'm so pleased that everything really came together in this way, and you're seeing the output of that right now.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think the collaborative nature of this project was really, we've always been a community that's relied on partnerships, whether it's Jobs Ohio, One Columbus, the state, also our partners at the New Albany Company, who have been land developers here within the community for quite some time. The school districts that enable us to, put the packages together that we do in order to attract businesses. And then obviously the utility companies that come in, which are so important, I think, for tech companies and a lot of these companies in emerging industries in the state of Ohio. But it was really that partnership with Meta that set the bar for us with respect to working with corporations. We had never really done a data center of this scale before. It was a mega project from the outset, and there was a lot of things that we didn't understand about the data centers and how they worked and how they operated, and what the result would be as a benefit for the City of New Albany, a return on investment for the infrastructure that we were able to build as a part of an attraction to bring this project here. So really working with Brad and the Meta team, he's exactly right. Sitting down in the table and really understanding, okay, what's the problem and how do we solve for it? It was one of the most collaborative economic development projects I've ever worked on.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I guess, Brad, before we go too deep into this, we're talking about the New Albany Meta Data Center. What exactly, is it? And we all know that there's, data centers exist, and you see them a lot in Central Ohio, it seems like, and more seem to be coming. But what is the role? What is the function? And we can kind of talk holistically, and then we can perhaps dive down a bit into, New Albany specifically. But why is it important to a company like yours to have these data centers? And what is the impact on your business that you're doing across the world?
Yeah, data centers. I'm going to apologize in advance. I get super passionate about it. It's certainly core to everything I do. It's the backbone that connects billions of people across our suite of applications and allows them to communicate, to share meaningful aspects of their lives in a smooth and seamless manner. It's what allows our business to run, appropriately. Most of the time you take for granted the fact that they're out there and they're ultimately supporting all the necessary things that are happening. That means they're doing their jobs appropriately. But like, to drill down on the specifics, they are large buildings. They house thousands of computer servers. Those computer servers are processing, computing, storing information for the billions of people that are using our platform on a day-to-day basis. And they're enabling them to have a completely just user-friendly and seamless experience no matter where they are across the globe. So, when someone has no idea about what they are or where they are, or that means we're doing our job well. We've chosen really great locations where they can thrive and stay online and make sure that everybody gets the benefit of everything that we do.
Yeah. And Brad, a follow-up before Jennifer, I'd love to ask you the New Albany specific nature to the question, but what goes into, because I'm sure certainly a company like Meta does a lot of homework, a lot of research, and I know you have these not just in the United States, across the globe. What goes into and what makes a great data center location for your company?
So it's obviously an evolving process, and it's
Yeah.
evolved dramatically over my tenure at the company. I'd like to break it down into really two different categories, and each of which has a lot of subcategories. But you have the location on one hand, and then you've got the site on another. And from our standpoint, before we get to anything at the site level, we want to make sure that we're being incredibly efficient with our time, with our resources, and that of those across the table at the federal, state, local levels. So we go very extensive in evaluating dozens of factors at the location level. There are approximately, I think we're over 100 different sources of data that we analyze to make sure that we're doing all of our appropriate diligence there. These are things like labor pool, not just in operating the data center, but constructing it. I think you're seeing a lot of mega projects across the United States for data centers, but also outside of that, just large projects, EV manufacturers, the semiconductor industries driving all of these things. You have to be very smart when you're talking about a project of our size and scale to make sure that there's appropriate and robustness of the labor pool that's ultimately there. Energy is an important factor. Our data centers are 100% renewable. We want to make sure that we can secure that at a cost-effective rate. Network infrastructure, we got to connect the data centers. The data centers are part of one cohesive infrastructure system where they need to be able to communicate with one another. We care very much about putting them in safe places. We don't want any risk of natural disaster. You hear a term quite a bit about mission critical. Data centers are mission critical to Meta's ultimate goals of connecting the world. So that means they need to stay online. We need to have reliable infrastructure and be in places where it's not ultimately going to get impacted by any sort of hurricane or earthquake or things of that sort. We care about geographic diversity across our portfolio. We want to make sure that not too terribly close to one another, because if there is some unforeseen circumstance, you're not losing two data centers at the same time. We're kind of compartmentalizing any sort of risk that's ultimately out there. And cost is important. To say otherwise would be a lie. And I think, we're very careful when we do have multiple locations at our disposal for analysis, kind of putting them side by side in a comparative manner and understanding, are there comparative differences in how much it's ultimately going to cost from a business perspective before making that decision. Then once you've cleared that laundry list of factors, it allows you to then pivot to identifying a site. And we can do that through, state economic development agencies is a big driver of it. We've used real estate brokers in the past. Once we get to that level, you've cleared so many hurdles. And why it's so important to be robust on the location side is that there's a very personal process to engaging with, various municipalities. Jennifer, as you can tell, Jennifer and I have built a really strong relationship over the years. So we want to make sure that we can focus on the things that are specific to New Albany and that site, and that something that could have been caught at the desktop level is not ultimately hindering our ability to move forward. We have a standardized design, so we want to make sure the site's big enough to ultimately house that, the infrastructure's in place. We want to make sure that we're not doing it on a site that has any sort of environmental challenges. So, we can ultimately operate it in the manner in which we need to and construct it, and it's not going to jeopardize anything. And then probably the most important factor, at least in my opinion, is you need to understand that the community is supportive of what you're ultimately trying to do. And that goes into a lot of planning activities. Have they fully thought through the character of what they want this area to evolve into over time? I tip my hat to Jennifer and team. Like they definitely did, and it led to a very seamless, smooth process. Obviously, you're going to have challenges, but their thoughtfulness in planning that out before we ever came and started, talking to them about development, it showed. Yeah. So that plays a big factor in all that, and that was probably way longer of an answer.
No, that was fascinating, and I do have one follow up before
Please.
Jennifer, we kick it to you. But Brad, what's the I think the other thing, I won't say when I talk just Ohio in general, and certainly the success here, but I think it's easy to see what Meta has built in New Albany, and I don't want to say take it for granted, but it's pretty remarkable when Meta chooses a location, chooses a place for this. What is the scale like in terms of how many data centers does Meta operate, and where globally kind of are they, in kind of broad strokes, I guess?
So at the moment we have, if you're taking into consideration everything that's both operational and under construction that we've announced, you have globally 21 data centers across the portfolio.
Okay.
The majority of them are located in the United States, but we do have 4 that are either in Europe or Asia. And, the location of each one of them, a lot, like I said before, the factors ultimately drive, where we ultimately put them. But the need continues, and it will continue for the foreseeable future. Yeah, so it's a large portfolio that we currently manage across the board, and got to be smart and thoughtful about how we ultimately go about that process.
Yeah, and I'm glad I asked that because Jennifer, for you, about 20 of these globally. I mean, that's not a lot, and because there's such huge investments, and you both have said mega site, which we'll kind of dig into that in a bit. But it's pretty exceptional to have a community where one of these exists. And New Albany has a lot of data centers, but what about it? What about New Albany is it that has been the place for companies like Meta, welcoming them, and then clearly having built such a strong relationship? So what has gone all into it from your side, the local side, the Ohio side, that has made your community such a fantastic place to have something like this?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing is always just collaboration. I go back to that over and over again, and that's probably one of my standard answers for every question, just because when you're out there alone and you're just trying to get things done and you're not working cooperatively with whether it's other public sector entities or private sector entities, then you're really just not, you don't make huge progress, right? You get some great deals and maybe you turn a nice career or something like that. But when you're really willing to kind of lay it on the table and say, hey, I want to be a part of a team. I want to work collaboratively with as many people as possible in order to make this, make something spectacular happen. I think it changes, and it changes the deal. And that's sort of our philosophy and has been our philosophy for a long time. We are a strategic plan community, which means we follow a strategic plan that was developed back in 1998, and it's updated every 4 to 5 years. And the reason why this is important is because our most recent update included one of the largest community participation segments that we've ever had. We had over 3,500 people that had participated in some way, whether it was online responses or workshops or even meetings in people's homes, business roundtables. And as we go through this public process, the plan becomes endorsed by the people in the community. So when we're putting together our strategies and we're putting together our plans and we're saying, hey, this is where we want to be in the next 5, 10, 15 years, those pieces of information are coming from the people that live here and the people that work here, and then going through a public process so that it's getting endorsed by then our legislative body. So we already know ahead of time where we're going, and we know what people want to see. So it enables us to be, I think, a little bit more aggressive when it comes to economic development, because we have a clear path in front of us. And the other piece of it, I think, is listening and learning. You know, I don't know, Brad's going to laugh when I tell this story, maybe, but maybe. But, you know, this wasn't Meta. Actually, this project, when we won this deal, it wasn't the first time that they were at the table here in Central Ohio, and wasn't the first time in New Albany. There was actually a project that had a different set of requirements. It was a data center project, much smaller, and had a different set of requirements maybe 2 years before we won this project. And we were shortlisted, and that's when we did a lot of work and a lot of relationship building with the Meta team, and really tried to figure out whether or not data centers were going to be the right fit for us in New Albany and where they fit into Central Ohio. And I'll never forget, I know the month and everything. It was December when Brad called and broke up with us. And I say that because we really did have, we laughed, and it was one of those kind of, it's not you, it's us type of things. But what I'm thankful for is that we had built such a strong relationship that we were able to sit down and do a very, very thorough, like, after project review. And so we were able to kind of take all of our metrics and evaluate those with the Meta team and say, okay, what could we have done better? What made a difference? Where do we need to work? And there were some areas that we needed to understand and we needed to work on. And some of that was around infrastructure, right, on the local level, where we might have had an idea on a paper for where we thought water and sewer and roads were going to go, but we really didn't have them develop much past that. And I think our past practices of having a strategic plan and building what we say we're going to build helped us get to the final list. But ultimately, we didn't have enough done to really enable somebody to say, yeah, we're going to make $1 billion investment in your community. And so we needed to do some work there. I think the state of Ohio needed to do some work with respect to energy and renewables, right? And some of the things that were going on at a state level. And we also needed to just kind of figure out how the data centers were going to, like, function within the rest of the business park and fit into the rest of the industry clusters. And we didn't have an answer for that yet. So fast forward, 2 years, and we were actually in California for a completely different meeting. We were meeting a different company, and we called Meta and said, hey, can we come and stop by and see you? And they were like, of course. And so we got a tour of the facility and sat down and talked to them about how far we had come and shared information about, this is now the land that's been, zoned and annexed. And this is the infrastructure plans that are, instead of a line on a piece of paper, they're over, 60% complete. And so we just wanted to let them know, hey, we listened, we heard you. We appreciate the fact that you helped us figure this out. And if you ever have a need, and gosh, within 3 months, we got a phone call, and maybe Brad, you can speak more to this than I can, but the cool thing is that it was a requirement that had a really, really tight time frame. And I thought your team, at least the way I remember it, was asked, hey, who do you know, where have you been in your site selection trips that you know that a community that they're ready and they can get it done, and you picked up the phone and called us.
That's exactly it. I was also going to note, I think that's still on when we re-engage through where we actually made an announcement and stuck a shovel on the ground. That is still to this day the fastest we've ever gone through the process. I think I was asking somebody in preparation of this, I think it was 4.5 months, which is a Herculean effort and shows you how much time and thoughtfulness Jennifer and team put into, kind of pivoting from those initial conversations. I also, that's a phone call. She noted before. It's never a fun one to make, especially when you build such good relationships, and it becomes like a family type thing. You're spending so much time just talking through the logistics of the project. So, when we did have that conversation about, having to pause at the moment, and we really meant it. We knew we had more projects that were coming down the line, and we knew this was going to happen at some point. They were too good. The site was too good. The city was too good. It was too good of a partnership to not ultimately move forward at some point. And they were total professionals along the way. And it just shows you, it ultimately ended in a successful project. And that's what we look for. That like critical partnership and moving forward, because if everything's smooth right now and everything is perfect, that's fantastic. And like, you hope that's ultimately going to be the case, but something's going to pop up at some point. And you need to be comfortable in picking up the phone and calling somebody that's going to ultimately give adequate consideration and care to the thing that pops up. And it could be, both ways. So I always know that, when circumstances arise, I can pick up the phone and call Jennifer, and everything's going to be great from there on.
Yeah, same. Yeah, I would say that too. I think, if I'm a community in Central Ohio or anywhere for that matter, that's anywhere in Ohio or any place that wants to create a technology cluster, I think it really does go back to kind of trying to figure out what your assets are, and then talking to those in the industry and trying to figure out what you need to put in place, because sometimes we think we know, but until we have the industry experts that are guiding us as far as what's important to them. And the assets that are important to tech companies are very different than those that are important to corporate office. And so what are the things that are important? I think Brad talked a lot about, utility, fiber optics, talent, labor, the type of talent, and how that's cultivated with not just universities and colleges, but how it's sprinkled in with even K-12, right? And how we're preparing that next generation of labor force to work in these tech businesses and what that means to them. So all of those things are important. And I think, again, putting our own opinions aside and just sitting down and saying, okay, how can we be better? Like, we're always asking that question, like, what can we do better? That's why, we update our plan every 4 to 5 years, because we don't want it to just be a plan that sits on the shelf. We want to constantly be asking ourselves, okay, what went well over the last 4 to 5 years? What can we do that's different? What can we do? What should we keep doing? But what do we do that's better?
Jennifer, what does the next 4 to 5 years look like as you all are thinking of it, with the investment and the growth, Meta coming to town? Because again, Ohio's been on this really incredible roll, but it really, I don't know quite when the dates, but it seems like it's been in the past 2 to 3 to 4-ish years. And so in tech, certainly things can move and change so rapidly and quickly. COVID, for all the awfulness that it brought us, really also brought a lot of opportunities that our state has seen that maybe might not have happened had COVID not occurred, and people kind of bringing jobs back to the US and just all this development that we're seeing. So as you're looking kind of with a tech landscape specifically, what does that next 4 or 5 to 10 years even look like? And how does like a Meta, fit into that as you're communicating the value of all this work that you're doing with, citizens and residents of New Albany?
Yeah, I think, first of all, Meta was the catalyst in New Albany that really sparked the tech industry cluster that we have. We had a couple smaller, enterprise data centers specific to companies that were in the Central Ohio region. but Meta's investment, first of all, by Meta making a mega project investment, I think what they were saying to the world, right, is that the state of Ohio is ready to start welcoming tech companies.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big deal, right? So you go from traditional manufacturing and a lot of agriculture, which is great, but really to shift the landscape a little bit, I think was important. And Meta's investment in the state of Ohio and subsequently in New Albany did that. And as a result of that, others came with them, and certainly some great announcements, and some of that even morphed to not just tech with respect to data centers, but even biotech, and kind of seen emergence of that industry, which again kind of carries those common threads. So I think that was really the eyes of the world then were on Ohio as a result of that investment. I think having a company like Meta in the community and in Central Ohio, they raise the bar in so many different ways. I mean, they're so engaged in the community, and not just New Albany, but the Central Ohio community. They do some remarkable things from a philanthropic standpoint. They're always present. They're sort of on Chambers of Commerce, and they have this community action grant program that has given millions of dollars to the school systems, not just the New Albany school system, but the Licking Heights school system and Johnstown Monroe and others that have applied. So I think what happens as a result of that is they start to change the culture, right? And they start to change the awareness of people that live in Central Ohio about this industry that may not have existed here before. The state as a whole has been losing population steadily over the last couple of years, and this is opportunities to create education programs, which have already been done as a result of, there's now a data center program that's at the vocational schools as a result of the presence of Meta and then the other data centers that followed afterwards. That didn't exist in 2017, right? And so now you have this pipeline of opportunity and talent in this field that wasn't here before. So what does that mean for generations of students that now don't have to leave the state of Ohio to get a job in tech? They don't have to locate to California or Seattle. Although they're beautiful places, they can stay here, and Central Ohio is just as beautiful in some ways.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's how I think it changes everything. And that's how I think these kinds of investments and having companies like this in the community, it makes a difference.
Yeah. And Brad, would love your perspective of how does that, that's kind of the end result of working with New Albany, working with Ohio and local Central Ohio communities for a number of years now. But how do you, if you, reverse engineer it, and I assume that's part of the culture and that's part of the project where that, hey, when we become part of the community, we want to become part of the community and we want to invest in it. So how does that play into it? Because I think on the flip side, there's all sorts of stories of companies that, are either born in one place or they come in and they don't have that perspective. They don't have that kind of community building and relationship building mindset that clearly you all have, because I've also seen it in action at some of the local high schools and, talking with folks and just knowing, your all's team members that live and work right here, but for this global company.
We're lucky. I think this is part of our culture as a company, and I'm very pleased that that's the case, because personally, I think it resonates. And we really see our data centers as an opportunity to continue on the connection of the world in the manner that we do through software, but to actually do it in real life. And if we can show up somewhere and have a meaningful impact and make the community better in some way, it's a win-win. And in this scenario, New Albany was a great place before. If we can make it a tiny bit better with our presence, that's fantastic. So we look for that. That's part of the evaluation process. And I think you're never going to try to convince somebody that they should change what their plans are for a particular community to better support a data center. That's never the case. We want to go through, we want to make sure that the community has done some planning. They've been thoughtful about, what's the best use of this particular property, because if you force them into a decision, it's not going to be beneficial on the back end. And if it changes master planning in some material way, like, you're going to have some community opposition. That's never the case in which we, when we go through this process, we need to know there's a lot of land across the United States.
Yeah. there certainly is.
Partners are the critical aspect. So, and this is perfect. all the planning activities that Jennifer talked about were fantastic. She had been thoughtful about all, thinking through what they ultimately needed from this. And, she's also honest. I think, just hearing them tell you what they can do and what you can't do when you're going through the process, I want to hear that. I never want to hear people just nod and smile and say yes. And then I start having a little bit of concern whether the yes was a real yes, or was it just we're starstruck by the project and we ultimately want to do whatever we can in our power to do that. At one in time did I feel that in this scenario. I had complete confidence that every time we were told yes, it was a real yes. Yeah. And every time we were told no, they were willing to come to the table and think creatively about, things that we can do mutually to kind of solve the problem in front of us.
Yeah, that's true. I love that because, all of this stuff, there's a lot of people in business that, treat things as a one-time transaction, but this isn't. And Jennifer, and I wrote it down, you had, Meta was the spark, and all this development, and you can tell the relationship is still there years after putting this together and working together on it. So this has been, fantastic. And as someone who geeks out on this stuff, I've loved some of the backstory to it all and, how it came to be. But we'll now kind of pivot towards the last part of our show, where we ask all of our guests the same questions, and they're just fun, quick ones, kind of fast fire that, just fun to get a different perspective. So we have someone in Meta today, someone in economic development, we have venture capitalists, we have startup founders. So it's just fun from New Albany to Northeastern Ohio or down to Cincinnati, everywhere in between, hearing about it. And so for each one, we'll start with Jennifer first, and then we'll go to Brad. And the first one is, what is a challenge that you're working to solve? So this could be in your day-to-day. It could be something, that's big. It could be putting together that next 4 to 5 year master plan for the community, or it could be something a bit smaller. No right or wrong answers here, but what's a challenge that you're working to solve?
So we just recently announced that a semiconductor was going to be coming and moving into the area. Yes.
I have this, for those listening, I have the Silicon Heartland t-shirt on. So
I think that's the challenge we're working on right now, is really how to get them up and running without disrupting the quality of customer service that we provide our existing customers and businesses. And so how do we do that in a way that's meaningful and really delivers the promise that we lay out there for people to be able to, work at the speed of business, not the speed of government, and being able to do that for everyone.
Yeah. And being popular is good, but it can also it means you're popular. And so you have a lot of stuff going on. So I can absolutely see that. Brad, how about you? A challenge that you've been working to solve?
It's an ever evolving one. It probably started with some of our early discussions on this particular project, but continues to today, is just how do we move faster to support the needs of the business? I mean, from a personal standpoint, with job security, obviously more data centers, the better off I am, and better off, honestly, like the company and our ability to deliver what is ultimately needed for billions of people across the world. So from my standpoint, the big challenge is, okay, well, how do we incorporate lessons learned from prior projects? How do we stay nimble? How do we scale yet still stay smart and analytical in how we go about all of these processes? But there's no definitive answer. It's an ever evolving process. And we got the team in place right now where I feel confident we're going to get there, but it is something we're constantly trying to stay on top of and evolve.
Yeah. Second one, and Jennifer, we'll go back to you to start. But what's a favorite read, listen, or watch? So this could be a book, a podcast, or a show. And again, sometimes it's something really work related, and other times this is how I unplug at the end of the day or on the weekend to kind of make sure that I show up on Monday morning ready to go.
Yeah. So I have 3 kids, and they're all different ages, 2 teenagers and one young one. And so I think one of my favorite things to do is, one TV show that we all share in common is Survivor. Because we can all kind of enjoy it. So that's one of the big ways that we unplug.
That's great. Yeah, that's those sound like ages where it's tough to kind of line up interests and what people are, liking and all that type of stuff. So Survivor's a good one. How about you, Brad?
My team makes fun of me, but I do not care. At the end of the day, I'm one of these people that likes to kind of just kind of zone out with something that's going to always make me laugh and never miss, and that is Office Reborn. So Comedy Central has been fantastic about running those pretty regularly, and I don't care. I don't care where I turn the episode on or what season it is always entertaining from my standpoint.
Yeah, those never get old, and you find a new nugget each time of what's making you laugh, and maybe some life relevancy at the moment. We'll leave it at that one. Jennifer, back to you. Favorite place in Ohio? If you are having someone from the Meta team come on out, and it's actually a two-part. So a favorite place, and it can be the same answer, but a favorite place and a favorite meal. So if you're welcoming someone from the Meta team out from the Bay Area, where might you take them, or on the weekends, where are you going? So favorite place.
Yeah, well, of course. So New Albany, Ohio is my favorite place in Ohio. And I would take them to Rose Run Park, which was just recently completed in our village center. And it's one of the coolest, I think, community projects that we've done here in New Albany. And if I were going to take them to dinner, I would take them to the Pearl.
Oh, yeah.
She's stealing my answer. She knew that.
Well, and I figured there was probably going to be a commonality here, but the Pearl is fantastic. And Brad, as someone who got to experience it as like at some point, a first timer, I assume you enjoyed it. It looks like.
I did. There was a particular colleague that I traveled quite a bit with, and he was always responsible for mapping out ahead of time we were going to do dinner, because we're traveling from who knows where, we're exhausted, whatever. And the Pearl was on our first trip where we went to dinner, and I think we went to the Pearl every single time we came to town. It never didn't deliver. So that is definitely our go-to. It holds a special place in my heart.
Yeah, that's great. That's a family favorite for when people are in town or visiting. Brunch or dinner, you can't go wrong with either. So but Brad, Jennifer, this has been fantastic. This has been a ton of fun. It's been fun just getting to listen to you both reconnect as colleagues that have worked together on a really big project. And clearly, it's been a fantastic one for New Albany, for Central Ohio, the state of Ohio. So I want to thank you both. Anything we didn't get to, or anything you want to plug, or a website or anything like that either of you would like to share for our listeners or watchers?
I just wanted to thank you both. This is a lot of fun to do. I appreciate you taking the time to kind of put this together, Chris and Jennifer. As always, it's been too long, and thank you so much for participating. It's great to talk to you as always.
Yeah, thank you. Also, Chris and Brad, I'm so happy to have shared this time with you. This was really fun, and I'm glad we could make the time to do it. And I just also thank the Meta team. We're just so happy that you're here, and your engagement in the community. We can feel it and see it every single day. And so we appreciate all of you so much, and what you're doing here in Central Ohio.
Yeah, that's great. And Jennifer, that's a perfect segue, because same for us at Ohio X. We're incredibly grateful, Brad, for the whole team. You all support and help make so much work in Central Ohio possible. And it doesn't go unnoticed, because big companies, there's a lot of things going on, and it can be very easy to kind of just be stuck at the one mission at hand. But diving in and working to help build this opportunity that our state has, it's huge. And I have the Silicon Heartland shirt on, and as Jennifer said, Meta was a spark for all this, and people across Ohio are incredibly passionate about our state, and passionate about what's going on. And again, it takes talented people to make it all happen. So Jennifer, Brad, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate your time. Thank you to everyone for listening. We're so glad you're able to tune in. This has been a fantastic Built in Ohio podcast. I've loved it so much, and so I hope you have too. But we'll talk to you all soon. Thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye.